Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to this Budget 2026 briefing from Fingal Chamber in association with our partners in Dains Ireland. This morning's information session is all about trying to help you to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to significant changes made by government and understanding what those new measures might be, how it might affect costs, competitiveness, and trying to find those growth opportunities that can make the difference between reacting too late and making sure that you can plan with confidence going into next year. And for many businesses, the challenges lie in quickly interpreting the kind of complex announcements that can happen on budget day and in the finance bill and in the coming weeks, and trying to grasp that real world impact of those announcements, from tax changes to employment supports. You as leaders need clarity and insight on what you can act upon without delay, and that's what we're hoping to try and cover off with this briefing this morning. Delighted to have Dains Ireland, formerly McInerney Saunders, who are longtime supporters of this event, back on with us again this year. And we'll bring them in this morning to give us a breakdown as to what was announced yesterday. A little bit after that, then I'll invite the Chamber Chief Executive, Anthony Cooney, to, I suppose, summarise the business representative bodies' reaction to the budget, what they welcome, where they see maybe perhaps missed opportunities, and where the chamber might go in terms of advocating for businesses in the future. And we'll also bring in a business operator as well to get a bit of a flavour as to what is happening on the ground for a business who will be impacted by certain changes yesterday. So we get to hear from a local business as to what these kind of changes will mean, and hopefully some of the other people on the call here today will be able to relate with that. As ever, you'll be able to ask questions via your Zoom toolbar, and go into the Q&A section. You'll be able to ask them, and we'll do our best to get to them. I myself have a couple of questions that we'll throw to the guys after they've all had an opportunity to contribute, and hopefully this morning I'll be able to leave a kind of some clear insights on what has happened over the last 24 hours in terms of government announcements and what's set to happen over the coming months into next year, and get some expert analysis, as I said, first off, and maybe some actionable takeaways. Might be able to work those in for your strategy and looking at opportunities going forward. So as I said, thanks very much for joining us. We will first off join John Fitzgerald from Dains. I'd like to welcome John back. Thanks for joining us, and really looking forward to hearing a little bit more of a breakdown as to what yesterday really means for businesses and for workers.
Thanks, David. Good morning to everyone, and thanks to Anthony and David and Fingal Chamber for inviting us to join this event once again. For those of you that don't know me, my name is John Fitzgerald. Or for those of you that do know me, I'm still John Fitzgerald. I'm a tax partner with Dains Ireland. We're part of the Dains Group with offices across the UK and Ireland, and we advise a lot of Irish and international businesses on payroll, tax, M&A, corporate finance, and the practical supports that help businesses grow. My aim this morning is simple: to cut through Budget 2026 to the few things that I think matter, explain what bites now versus what kicks in later, and share some thoughts on some of the things that were mentioned. Budget isn't a spreadsheet; it's about choices and what the country values, and in this case, what the Finance Minister, Paschal Donohoe, values. This is the first of potentially 5 budgets for this government if it goes to full term. So it kind of sets the tone of what they're looking at over the next 5 years. And it does feel somewhat like the bad news is being front loaded ahead of presumably a budget giveaway in 5 years' time. This package leans into a small number of targeted tax changes with a large amount of capital investment. It's also trying to nudge supply of housing where it's stuck. It's looking to try and protect households, jobs, retain existing jobs, as opposed to creating even further jobs, and to keep the regime in Ireland competitive, predictable, while other reforms being worked on in the background. So the big takeaway that I felt from this was all about housing, about apartments, urban renewal, and now there are 3 things working together. The VAT rate on the sale of completed apartments is dropping from 13.5% to 9%. This is effective from last night up to 31 December 2030, and Coupled with that, there is also an enhanced corporation tax deduction for qualifying apartment construction, certain conversions. This is 125% of the expenditure incurred on building qualifying apartments. So they're trying to encourage an awful lot more um, development of apartment blocks, looking for higher density. The residential stamp duty refund has also been extended and has been made a little bit more flexible so that larger multi-phase schemes can access cash earlier in their build. The intent is, and I've heard this quite a bit over last night and this morning on the radio and TV, to close the viability gap on dense schemes, particularly in relation to city centres and key urban areas. If there are developers or landowners there that control sites, have pipeline assets, this is your signal to rerun feasibility studies and align program dates so that you carry everything out within the 2030 window, because these are use it or lose it measures. The second thing that I want to flag here is the entrepreneurial relief. It has been set at 1 million, the first 1 million of a gain at 10%. This is rising from the 1st of January 26. This is rising to a lifetime cap of 1.5 million at 10%. So put simply, on this extra 500,000 of a gain, tax at 10% is 50,000. At the standard rate of 33%, it will be 165. So there's a potential saving of about 115,000 arising from this extension to the relief where the various conditions are met. So for founders that are considering timing, this can be decisive. Already, since this was announced yesterday, I'm already having some conversation with people that are looking to resequence their exit, considering partial disposals rather than full disposals now, so that they can capture part of their gains in 2026 to try and avail of this higher cap. So what I expect is to see a bit more slowing down in activity between now and the year end. Another thing that I actually welcome this piece because I'm working on a few cases at the minute is SARP, the Assignee Relief Program. So this has been extended to 31st of December 2030. New entrants will still qualify from 26, where the salary is over 125,000 per annum. So existing claimants are unaffected. But for those mobility teams that have live cases, especially, as I said, I've been working through a few at the minute, debating whether or not to make a pre-31 December move in case SARP would be closed at the end of the year, which it had been flagged to do. This removes that uncertainty. This removes the cliff edge. This gives the people more opportunities to have strategic headroom as to whether or not they move pre-year end. You still have to keep an eye on the entry conditions. You still have to keep an eye on whether or not there's any administrative tweaks in the finance bill, which is due to be published, I think, the 16th of October. So the documentation, qualifying conditions, timelines, they all still matter. The next one, which it's kind of half a comment or half an announcement by the minister. It brings hospitality hairdressing VAT rate to 9%. This is welcome. It kicks in from the 1st of July 2026. Notably, it doesn't cover accommodation, so hotels, service apartments, B&Bs, Airbnb, short letting Airbnb in the hospitality sector. They are not covered. It signals that the government do want to support and recognise that there is support required for a very stressed service sector. But again, I think we do need to be honest about the context of this. So labour costs are continuing to rise. The national minimum wage is moving from the 1st of January next year. Auto enrolment will begin to flow through payrolls and employer budgets. PRSI remains a constant pressure point in total compensation to employees. The cost of energy are still on the increase. The cost of goods sold and supplies are still increasing. It's been highlighted for the last number of months that insolvencies in the hospitality sector are really, really high. They probably make up quite a lot of the insolvencies that we're seeing out there. And this announcement is hang on until next July. I'm not sure if every business will make it to the next holiday season without bridging that gap, without looking at their margins, without looking at improving productivity and financing arrangements. So, it's welcome, 9%, that's fantastic. Historically, again, VAT rates were supposed to be passed on to consumers. I don't think there's any intention for that to be the case this time around. This is an intention for support for small businesses. Could he have done other things? Possibly, probably, but this is the least complex route. Um, Last year, there was a simplification task force set up. And in last year's budget, there was a participation exemption for foreign dividends coming into Ireland. So that's quite a big step, even though it only brought us into line with a lot of our competitor companies. So that's where we have to look at is reducing complexities for businesses operating in other jurisdictions with head offices in Ireland. That could be simply an Irish export-led business with an operation in another jurisdiction, reducing that complexity of repatriating profits back here to the home country. It's a good direction of travel to say that they're looking at reducing other complexities such as participation exemption for branch profits. That's fantastic. And also the announcement of an action plan for interest deductibility is welcome. Like the way that interest deductions are taken in Irish tax regime is incredibly complex. So simplifying that would really be helpful. And again, on the question of simplification, while the R&D credit has been enhanced to 35%, it remains a really complex area in practice and can be, due to these complexities, out of reach for smaller SMEs due to the administration around it, the documentation expectation, the need to keep pace with having filing deadlines and submissions. So if you want a genuine broad-based domestic uptake on R&D credits for SMEs, a bit of simplification would be welcome there. The fund sector I see got a rate cut. It's useful. It's not the end of the world. It's not transformative. So the rate of tax on funds falls from 41% to 38%. And again, there is that roadmap to simplify this framework next year. It's helpful for after-tax returns, but it still sits significantly above the capital gains tax, where the headline rate is 33%. So the parity debate between the tax treatment of funds and capital gains tax isn't over, especially for retail investors that are comparing what to do. So what's now versus later? From the 1st of January 26, payrolls will need to be updated to reflect USC changes. There's a small boost to net pay for lower paid workers. But with the removal of energy credits, the rollout of auto enrollment, PRSI pressures, which have kicked in from this month, the real increase for a lot of employees may be lower than expected. The rent tax credit has been extended. Mortgage interest relief continues, although this will be tapering. The VAT on energy and your ESB bills stay at 9%, but that doesn't help with the underlying costs of energy. In relation to housing, this is the big thing, as I said, developers can plan immediately. 9% for VAT on apartment sales kicked in last night. Enhanced corporate tax deduction coming through. The Living City initiative, looking forward to seeing how that will operate in practice because this has been extended, widened to different cities and centres, and has been extended to 2030. And SARP is being extended as well, as I mentioned. There has been nothing there for the squeeze middle, no changes to personal tax credits or the level of income tax at 20% rate. So this is something I think that people who are hopefully expecting an inflationary increase are going to essentially get a tax deduction or a tax increase because the rate of standard rate cutoff and tax credits is not keeping pace. I did notice as well there was an announcement in relation to the future funds and infrastructure funds. Contributions are going to continue, which I think is really good. We've got, I think he was saying something like 15 billion in the war chest at the moment. So it's great that we save windfall corporate tax for the future. It'll provide steady investment in, I hope it'll provide steady investment in the grid, energy, water, transport. These are all unglamorous but essential networks that make housing delivery, business expansion, traction into Ireland, competitiveness possible. In a small open economy such as ours, those buffers can be the backbone that give us that competitive advantage. As I said, this is a bad news early theme. I'm going to call it for what it is. Said there's nothing there for the squeeze middle beyond the small USC tweak. The price of cigarettes went up last night. The carbon tax continues to ratchet. So there was an increase, I think, last night for the cost of your tank of petrol. And that is going to kick in again with a further increase from next year. There's no new blanket energy credits or one-off cost of living measures. On the compliance side, hopefully we will see some uh, uh, simplification, which should hopefully save finance teams some time as well as money. What to do now, as mentioned, if you hold department capable sites, rerun feasibility studies, consider changing the layout of your developments. Look at the CT uplift, the extra deduction, the extra 25% deduction, and look at your program deadlines. Talk to your lenders about cash flow profile, and see if you can have these earlier stamp duty refunds. If you run payroll, you'll need to look at your USC from the 1st of January, auto enrollment, communications for employees. If you're in hospitality, you probably need to start planning now what's going to happen between January and June. How are you going to survive and cross over that bridge until the new holiday season kicks in? Because wages and auto enrollment are kicking in from January. The VAT supports are only going to come in from July. If you're a founder, as I mentioned, the entrepreneur relief cap is increasing from the 1st of January as well. This impacts on deal timing for if you're having mergers, if you're looking at buying another company, or if you're looking to exit. Two final notes. I suppose the first is the target nature of the tax package. It's get apartments built. That's it. Get housing, get apartments built, higher density. And let's try and keep things going for the next budget, without spending too much here this time around. Second, it's always the case. We'll see what's in the fine print, what happens in the finance bill, what the eligibility criteria are for some of this extra deductions in corporation tax, some of the even the derelict homes, what's happening in there, if there's going to be a general application of the VAT reductions, if there's any administrative changes in auto enrollment. So we're going to see about all of those in the next few weeks, see if there's anything else in there. Thing I will say is there are some changes. Get advice early. Come and talk to us if you need anything rather than trying to fix it after implementation. And one final point, just as I'm closing up, a quick invitation. Dains Ireland, we're partnering with Currency for an evening conversation entitled From Startup to Global Scale with special guest Tommy Kelly of the ESW fame. It's being hosted at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Dublin Airport on the 23rd of October at 6. So you might visit our website, contact us here, or check out our LinkedIn page to register. We'd love to see you there. Thanks very much for your time. And David, I'll hand it back to you to move on.
Great. Thanks so much, John. Thanks for that breakdown. As I said, I have some questions for myself. I'll hold off until we've had the views of the other contributors. Um, and if anyone else, as a reminder, does have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function, and we'll do our very best to get to them before the end of this morning's quick session. Thanks again, John. I'd like now to go and introduce Anthony Cooney, who's the Chief Executive of Fingal Chamber with us here, and looking for Anthony to join in and to give I suppose, a chamber perspective here for the response to what the budget means to the business advocacy group from not only the Fingal Chamber but also Chambers Ireland, the kind of network of businesses that are represented across the country. Anthony, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks, David. And thanks, John, for again a very consummate summary of the budget. I suppose there was a time years ago, a lot of people spoke about the price of cigarettes and whether the price of alcohol went up, but things are getting a bit more complex now with some of the issues we have. I suppose from our point of view, it's very much seen as a pro-business budget with some of the measures that have taken place. But you would have, again, I'd agree with John that some of the measures to kick in the second half of next year, it might be a case of too little, too late for some people. And historically, or traditionally in the catering and hospitality industry, the crunch time for them always has been the first quarter of the new year. And they trade up to Christmas, and then it's the lean times for everybody, January, February, into March, into St. Patrick's Day. And I think that personally, I think it's a bit of an own goal in relation to promising something that won't help the people who most need it in the short term. I think that's a problem. I think the bigger issue is the cost of doing business overall, and I think it's far too high. There are people making decisions for us who, if you looked at it from a business perspective, uh, if you're a small operator of a coffee shop or a bar, you've got uh, pay increases with the minimum wage increase. You've got auto enrollment coming in. You've got your water charges going up. Uh, you've got your power, for your electricity and your gas is going up somewhere in the region of 9% all the next couple of months. And somebody say, well, you get a VAT break in the second half of next year of 4.5%. I'm not sure it's going to cut it. And I particularly feel for the frontline hospitality people. I think that's been missed completely, to be honest. I know there's been a lot of talk about it, but there's so many other input costs for that type of business, like not least of which of their food pricing, outside of utilities and labor and so on. The food prices, like beef, for example, has gone up almost 50% in a year. Um, Chicken has gone up 15. Butter has gone up 28%. There's a huge input cost there for those guys. And I don't think that's not recoupable when it comes to doing your menus. And as the saying always goes about chefs, that every chef can cook, but not all chefs can make money for you. And that's it's going to be a difficult task. So I think they may have missed that one. So in overall terms, it's seen as a pro-business budget. Um, I'm not so sure about. I listened to James Brown, the minister, this morning on the radio about the housing targets, and he couldn't give us one when it came to the apartments being built. So for dropping the VAT rate again by 4.5% immediately, which is taking effect today, and he was asked for what does he think that's going to generate, he couldn't answer it or didn't answer it. And to be honest, if somebody's doing that, if you're giving something and you actually don't know what you're going to get out of it, well, why give it in the first place? So I think maybe they do know, they have a figure somewhere. But what is very clear is, and most people who know us from the chamber here, we do a business sentiment survey twice a year, and for the last 3 years, consistently, housing has been the number one issue concerning the business community because they can't get places for their people to live in, the workers to live in. Uh, it's a real issue. It doesn't seem to be getting sorted. If anything, it's getting worse. We'll deliver less houses this year than last year, and we'll probably deliver less houses again next year than this year. So until things start to pick up, so it's there's a lot of money being put on the table for all sorts of things with infrastructure. Uh, the reality is, as a nation, this sounds quite downbeat about it, but as a nation, we're struggling to be able to provide water, wastewater, and power, and we haven't been added the infrastructure necessary in the last 15 years, which most of the people who are in power today have been in power for the last 15 years. And we haven't put in the critical infrastructure required to be able to deliver housing. We have an instance here in West Dublin where there's a foreign direct investment organisation coming in to put in 600 jobs in West Dublin, engineering jobs in a high-end futuristic sector, and they couldn't get the power. So that's gone to Zaragoza in Spain. So I think we have to bite the bullet now. We really have to deliver on infrastructure commitments. And it's no longer good enough to say we are going to build it and we're putting more money for something. Well, you got to get shovels on the ground. And only yesterday I was looking at a photograph here. 20 years ago, on the 8th of November, my predecessor, Tony Lambert, was at a launch of the Metro for Swords. And that photograph was in the Fingal Independent. We have it here in our archives. And, it looks now like there's a bit of momentum getting into the Metro. But there are lots of other projects I think we have to deliver on. And I'm not sure, from listening to the budget yesterday and reading the reports this morning, that a lot of them will be delivered on. That's my personal take on it, and for the business community. So I think we have to lobby our relative TDs, senators, local councillors to make sure we get all of the planning issues over the line and get projects delivered. We have money. for the first time in our lives as a country, we have money, but we got to deliver on it.
Great. Thanks so much, Anthony. Before I delve into some of the questions, I'll bring in Greg Clarke, who works with Amica Eco-Hairdressing. Greg is on the ground operator of a business in Castleknock area, and I'd like to invite him to give his perspective as a small business and what he feels has been welcomed or maybe missed opportunities perhaps in the budget, and what the conditions are like, I suppose, for someone in his role out there. Greg, thanks very much for joining us.
Hi, David. I don't know whether there's a lot I can add to what the previous speakers have said, other than the passion of a small business owner. And I'm in business 25 years, and we were promised this VAT reduction in the program from government, thinking that it was coming. And I'm always involved in the industry. I've been involved for 20 years with the Irish Hairdressing Federation. I was at an event the other night, and I've seen people who've been in business for a long time. I've never seen them so nervous. We've come through recessions and pandemics, but at a time when we should be actually going, great, the country's in great shape. We should be able to, we're all fearful. Biggest thing I'd have to say for small business owners is you have to ask yourself, is it worth my while doing this? Is it worth my while going in here, putting the hours, creating small jobs? There might be a small amount of jobs, but if you combine them all together, they're a big, large part of the economy. And I just feel that the government have let us down. Here's it's a dangling carrot. Here's a reduction for you, but you're not getting it for 6 months. But unfortunately, for a lot of small employers, that's going to be too late. It's really going to be too late, because the amount of charges that are coming down the road, I can see it in my margins, and I'm in business 25 years. So any young entrepreneur, there's a young entrepreneur just opened a coffee shop beside us, and I respect anybody that wants to try and open a business, but I don't think he realizes what's coming. And turnover can be flattering at times, but it's profit at the end of the day. And why would anybody run a business if they're not making a profit? And at the moment, there is no profit to be made. So you're literally just going day to day, and the government, I think they've let us down. And I'm beginning to think we chased the wrong thing in chasing the VAT reduction, because there's massive employers in the hospitality industry. I know the hotels aren't in it, but we won't name names, but big employers that have turned over massive amount of profit, and they're now going to get that VAT reduction come June or July, and they'll be still in business because they have the resources. But the small competitor that's around them will be gone. So I just feel small competitors are a big part of communities, the big part of local areas. I'm actually sitting outside a church here. They're just coming out of mass, and a lot of these are clients that have been coming into our salon for years, and they see the cost of living going up. And there was a time when we had the VAT reduction, I would pass that on to the customers. But as I said to somebody this time, there's a VAT reduction, I can't afford it. I've had a 30% rent increase. I've got auto enrollment. I've got minimum wage increases. I'm all on for young people having a pension, having auto enrollment. I'm all on for increasing the minimum wage. But there'll be no businesses to offer these services to employees if there is no business there. So that's my view on it. And it's not just hairdressing, it's the small business that are around me. Like we have just something off the cuff, but we have a protest march, because Jack Chambers' office is above my business here. We have a protest march at 1 o'clock here on Saturday, and it's going to probably decimate the business for the afternoon. But that's what we have to contend with. So there's just and we had Forza there 3 Fridays ago, took over the whole car park, because everybody had a car parked it, and they wanted to protest, and it wiped out the trade for the afternoon. So there's so many challenges coming down the road, and it is more complex than just a reduction of that. And I think the government have let us down on this, and I'd love them to view it. I know the Irish Hairdressing Federation have contacted them. I've emailed Jack Chambers and Eamon Curry, my local TDs, who said, can this be looked at? Could it be changed and brought forward? Because they are the government. They can make a change. So that's my opinion on it, David. I thank you and the rest of the speakers for the opportunity to give my point of view.
Great. Thanks so much, Greg. Great to get a viewpoint of someone on the ground. I maybe throw back to you, Greg, straight away, with the questions. Like, your perspective is kind of overall, you don't think the budget is making it any easier to kind of run or grow a business, and that is that my understanding? And
Yeah,
you
definitely.
you reckon
Or
that,
stay in business.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like if I'm looking at as a 62-year-old successionary planning, which I've always had, I've younger members of my team that I would love to someday pass the business on to. It's been very good for me for 25 years. But I begin to look, would they want it? Would they want that? Would they want the pressure of it? You know what I mean? I've 25 years of experience. But as I said at a meeting in Athlone with Fine Gael meeting think tank that they had there last year, I said, you have to, there's whip and what's in it for me? So what's in it for me to keep trading? But if you lose the established senior business people, like the pub that's beside me, the guy that owns it in the latter stage of his life, is there anybody that wants to buy these businesses or take them on? When you're listening in the media and you hear all the costs and why would you go, why would I do that? But it's a loss to you're building all these apartments, but there'll be no local shops, local hairdressers, local cafes to go to. We'll just have big conglomerates, which isn't the warmth and the personal service that we're used to in this country. Because Ireland was the home of welcomes, and we're becoming just let's look after everything, big industry, big corporates, but let's forget about the individuals. I'd love to talk to you about my view on apartment living, but that's another day's take.
we'll cover that on another day. But I would like to ask you, what do you think would be make the biggest difference then if you were to get an ear of the likes of Jack Chambers? What would make the biggest difference for a business like yours if there were to be any sort of adjustments to what was announced yesterday? Would it be, be looking to get the VAT reduction brought forward to January, or would it, as you mentioned, no? Is there something that they can do to maybe carve out some of the larger multis that they're not looking to support as much and maybe target that more towards the small end of business? Is there anything, a measure you can think of that would be more beneficial?
Well, do you means test the businesses? I don't know. Do you kind of see who really needs it? Is there other thing like can we be energy savings that we can give for small businesses? There's so many different things. When COVID kicked in, I sang praises of our government of how they stepped in and helped small businesses. Because if they hadn't stepped, because I had friends in the UK, in America, and they still haven't recovered from then. They still haven't recovered from that time. But our government did help us then, and I'm asking them to help us again. Because we're not facing a pandemic now. We're not facing a recession. We're thinking the government is thinking ahead to what might happen in the future if something happens globally. But let's worry about what's happening internally at the moment. There's a lot of people are very uncertain about their futures, and we're finding less people coming into the industry. I'm sure there's less people coming in to want to work in a coffee shop or whatever because they're just hearing all this uncertainty about it. So why would you want a career in that industry if it's very uncertain? You want assurances that business is going to be there in 4 or 5 or 10 years time. But at the moment, that uncertainty is there. So I think bring it forward to 9%, but I think it should be indefinite because what the fear in our industry is that there's another budget 4 months after it comes on in July, and they go there. They had 4 months, and now we're to come back up again, and we're back to square one. So I think the 9% should be put in indefinitely, and it should be brought forward to at least January. That's just my view on it.
Great, thanks very much. I'll throw open the next question to all three, and it's whether Budget 2026 really helps conditions for entrepreneurship and that local growth of startup, scale up businesses. What do you think on the matter?
Well, it's something like Greg touched on it there. There's a lot on R&D, which is fantastic, try and create innovation, that sort of things. But like we work with a lot of SMEs, and that's just beyond them. Either the cost of maintaining the documentation, the cost of looking at it, the cost of access to it, it's beyond them. And I know it was spoken about, I'm fairly sure it was spoken about after the last budget as well, about helping the domestic business environment, as you say, the scale ups, look after our scale ups here rather than those that are on the stock exchange or rather than those that are availing of other subsidies and other grants or getting support from other jurisdictions. Look after our local, the heartbeat of the economy, the heartbeat of your locality, that are your, pubs and coffee shops up and down the center of towns. And like that is one of the comments that was there. Even Anthony said it. Nobody knows what benefit this apartment VAT reduction is going to provide. Nobody can quantify it and say this is going to give us X number of new builds, new apartments. But in terms of targeted support, maybe VAT is this catch-all. You can't really target VAT rate reduction, but they could have done something. I know Greg touched on it there. They could have done something similar to what was done during COVID. There was they're all the Wisses, Twist, Chris, and Briss. So there was the temporary wage support, there was the COVID restriction support, and there was the business resumption support. So they were targeted supports at your SMEs reopening the doors after COVID. Those were targeted supports for businesses that suffered significantly as a result of the COVID shutdown. So here is one of those things that could have happened very easily to target. Okay, you're going to get hit. How many people are on your payroll? What's the impact going to be of the wage increase, the PRSI increase of 0.1%, the auto enrollment? How is that going to hit your P&L? And maybe there could have been a targeted um, support for those types of business as opposed to the blanket, everybody in hospitality, everybody, and I know it was mentioned, large hospitality, restaurant chains throughout the country that are making significant profits are going to benefit from this as well. And like Greg said, this is a VAT reduction where it's not expected to be passed on to the consumers. This is expected as a support for the coffee shop. This is expected as support for the hairdresser, for the takeaway, for the supermarket in the small local village that is selling sandwiches over the counter. It's those sorts of things. Um, but a targeted twist, crisp, brisk, that sort of thing probably would have supported the business. And again, look, the other side of it is not every single business is going to scale up to take over the world. So we still need these, I said, the heartbeat of the community to keep going. Everyone is still going to want their haircut. Everyone is still going to want to go to the coffee shop or go to the pub and have a chat and a meal. Everybody will still want that. Not necessarily, as I said, going to expand into other markets, other jurisdictions, but it'll keep that cycle of local, shop local, stay local. It'll keep the money in the local community. It will give a lot of the people a training ground for their future jobs and their future careers by getting to deal with people at that level. So yeah, I think I do think that there should be more targeted support. I would agree with that. The Restaurants Association have lobbied long and hard for the last number of years to reinstate the VAT reduction. And this is like half the answer. And as Greg said, if there's a headwind coming through next autumn, Minister Donoghue could change his mind and with a stroke of a pen say, right, from midnight on October 2026, we're now going to reinstate 13.5% VAT across the board. Sorry about that. You've now had 2 months or 3 months of it, July, August, September, and reinstate it from October onwards. Like that level of certainty is not there for small businesses that are required. And as well, it's cash. So businesses need cash, and I understand there are viable businesses out there that need a bit of support. And maybe that's the thing that they're trying to do here is to look at businesses that are not viable and say, okay, if they can survive between January and June, well, then so be it. Maybe there's like that sort of analysis being done of the sector to say there is going to be some attrition here. There is going to be some, what's the expression? That the collateral damage in the industry between January and June. And maybe it's acceptable in the Department of Finance to have that level of collateral damage rather than, okay, let's keep the economy going. Let's keep the local economy going, not just the wider macro economy of Ireland Inc., but the local economy. So yeah, it's a tough one out there.
I did hear an economist over the weekend, discussing that idea of, closures in particularly in the hospitality sector, and referenced a survey that had been done in the United States, which said, the average lifetime of a restaurant would be about 5 years, and so naturally there's going to be quite a bit of churn in that industry, and that perhaps not to take a lot of the anecdotal evidence that might come up as being a real steer for what's actually happening overall in the industry. But it's interesting to note that it's not just the VAT increase, or sorry, should say decrease reduction, is more targeted measures are perhaps the better way of trying to do this over a more medium term period, rather than as you said, the uncertainty of this year. Will we get it? Will it be extended? Will it be extended each year on year, as it has kind of come in a decade or so ago, and then it kind of went out, and then it came back with COVID, then it went back out, and now it's coming back in. So the kind of industry does need some more long-term certainty. Perhaps at the start of a budget cycle might have been the opportunity, or a government cycle of budgets, as you mentioned earlier, might have been an opportunity to do that. But I suppose we'll keep our eyes and ears out to see if there's any further promises on that remaining once it does come in next July, albeit when it will. Anthony, would you like to come in on anything there related to overall in the budget summary, and perhaps maybe you might share with us, a particular area that you feel that there needs to be kind of a stronger follow through from government?
I just want to make reference to one of the points that Greg made first,
Yeah,
very
sure.
relevant, is that it was all about VAT in a particular sector. So for the hospitality sector to go from 13.5% to 9, uh, and John's point then about it, this time next year they might have a different view of the world and may well change it. But there's so many other factors that play when it comes to running a business. And Greg would know this very well. Your electricity costs, your gas, your water, your commercial rates, your input costs from your suppliers, who all are affected by those issues also. And they try and pass on those costs to you through the cost of the goods that they supply you. And I don't think there's been any cognizance by government that it is really, really difficult for people in this country to run independent businesses. And the bedrock of the economy is the small operator, small business. That is the bedrock, because all of the money that gets spent there, and Greg mentioned about, the shop next door, the coffee shop, the bar, and I know where John is based there in Swords, lots of little coffee shops and bars around there. Like, all of that money stays in the economy. It's the ultimate circular economy, and we're not very good in this country. This demonstrated it for me of cherishing that part of the economy. There's very little sort of fanfare of trumpets when somebody opens a coffee shop, or somebody opens a factory with 100 people in it. We're all up there getting our photograph taken. But the real economy is the small operator, the SME, the guy who takes the chance on his coffee shop or the bar or a hairdressing salon. And so I think they walked away from this. They were press ganged into it from a statement that Fine Gael made some months ago, that it was part of their programme for government. So they felt they had to deliver on it. I know a significant part of the government were against it, but it got through. But I think a lot of the help that will come to the smaller sector is largely dependent on large projects that may or may not be delivered over the course of the life of the government. Their track record to date for delivering large projects is not terribly good. Um, but the Metrolink, the cap in the airport, delivery of water, for the Greater Dublin region, power, all of these projects have to be delivered. And if they're not delivered, it will stall the economy, and we won't be able to deliver houses. We won't be able to get businesses to connect into the grid. So I think it's been a bit of a budget of, if you call it, two halves, to be honest. And I'd I'd have a concern for the SME sector, and I don't think we've paid due cognizance to the pressures they're under. And now we try and carry the message to the government on many an occasion, and local and national, and we keep emphasising the point that it's really important to keep the smaller business sector alive. And I also take the point that during COVID, albeit that's 4 or 5 years ago, the Irish government, like, there were stars in the show when it came to supporting the small business. But that's 4 or 5 years ago. Now the world has got to move on again. So and the other thing I'd be very concerned about is that the minister's commentary yesterday around, external factors affecting the performance of the Irish economy. And we keep going on about that. And we could be in danger of talking ourselves into a recession. And that's another thing. And that's a problem, I think. So I think confidence, public confidence in the economy, and given all the level of money we're alleged to have, um, the narrative seems to be towards, and I know I'm sort of a bit negative about the budget yesterday, but the reality is, in overall terms, I think we need to be very careful about the commentary, in particular for government, about external factors influencing what we may or may not want to do here. Yes, it's got an impact and we have to be cognizant of it, but I don't think we need to amplify it in every term. So,
Thanks very much. John, would you like to come in with anything there before we look to close up here?
I suppose there are some positives from it. It is touted as a pro-business budget, and we have to look at this in the context of the economy is pretty good. The government coffers are pretty full, and we've got a good fiscal buffer for Anthony, as you said, if there are any headwinds coming on stream next year. I'm hoping that the infrastructure and climate fund, or the Ireland fund, that those are contributed to and that they are put to what they're supposed to. I'm hopeful again that the housing supply is increased, because that is what has been talked about for the last number of years, and maybe this 9% reduction in this reduction in the VAT rate for sales of apartments, maybe that will be the key to unlock the increased supply in that area. Maybe the increased density will happen as well. The competitiveness for the R&D credit, yeah, that's positive, fantastic. Talent attraction, certainty, so the SARP being extended, that's great. While the hospitality and hairdressing VAT cut to 9%, it's not enough, but at least it's something. And it is literally one of those things where they can't do everything all in one go, and we just have to be hopeful that the next budgets will build on this to deliver more certainty and more support for the domestic market, as opposed to always trying to see what's further afield. That'll be it.
Great. Thanks so much, John. And thanks to Anthony and to Greg as well. I hope you have gained some insights from our briefing here this morning, and found it to be relevant to your own business. And thank you very much for answering a couple of questions and giving your viewpoints for other people in our business community. I suppose, we first heard of the idea, and there's been a lot of focus on the VAT here this morning, because it's, I suppose, the major headline change. But I know it was first brought to us probably 3 or 4 years ago in the chamber. It was suggested by some members as to splitting that out to be able to support those heavy or big employers and in the service industry. And it shows you that perhaps, if we can keep on relaying those suggestions, recommendations to government, that they may eventually actually come through. And while it's a bit of a delay to it actually happening, it is a welcome move for most businesses. On the other side of things, Anthony's mentioned infrastructure and housing. It looks like there's developments there, Metrolink approval promises, or the passenger cap going to cabinet about making changes there. So it looks like the government are set to make some changes, which seem very positive. But I suppose it's probably for a discussion for another day, but it'll be dealing with the planning system and the delays that it takes for those infrastructure projects to get through. So they're kind of I suppose the key points that I'm taking from this morning's discussion. Thank you all for joining us and for your contribution, and thank you everyone who has signed up to listen into the discussion. If you do have any questions, please reach out to ourselves. You can get us at events@fingalchamber.ie if any questions, and we'll get them through with Dains and the guys, and hopefully we'll be able to satisfy any queries that you might have in relation to the budget. But thank you all for joining us this morning, and I hope you all have a great day. All the best.